All right, we're on. Taylor Cecil, we're doing it, bro. Finally, I'm very excited.
Finally, man. It's been a bit in the making, but finally get to sit down and have a nice yarn.
Yeah, I'm keen. So we met, and you're like one of those rare people. So we met through Harley, who you train with.
Yep.
You're one of those rare people where, like, as soon as we left Justin Lane, me and Ricky were both like, did we just meet the nicest dude alive?
Thanks, man.
You come across those people every now and again, but they're quite rare, so.
Yeah. No, thanks, mate. No, it's, I think, it's something that I practice.
Yeah.
You know?
So you're actively, like, your whole thing, so you're a physical trainer, but I feel like your approach that you take is like a real overall look of like what is a good human, and not just like all the physical stuff that you do, the mental stuff with the breathing, the ice bath stuff, the nutrition stuff. Like, you just sort of seem like you're that guy that's just very interested in like what is the best way we can make a human run. Yeah,
no, exactly right. You're on the money with that. It's been a passion that I've developed over the years because of how I've seen it work on myself too, you know, like from that physical aspect, but then what else influences that physical aspect? I was a professional triathlete for quite some time and very sporty, you know, in my teenage years and as a youngster. And I was able to, you know, put in the hard work of the physical side of it, but started to also see the influence that things like nutrition or the way that I'm thinking or how much recovery time I get, what I'm stressing about, whatever, how all of that also impacts on the physical me. So I was very fortunate to have a coach when I was about 16 that introduced me to this side of it. And kind of a bit into my journey of it was at that stage, what got me led me to her was that I had chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue.
Oh, really?
When I was about 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
And at that time I was pushing really hard as a triathlete. I was trying to study super hard. I had different sorts of stresses going on naturally at that age, but also, you know, stresses that kind of put on myself a little bit. And the way I describe it is that all different stresses kind of funnel down into having the same effect on our body.
Because it's cortisol, right? Essentially, like there's a hormone that's being released when you're stressed.
Yeah.
So the more of that you have in the system, literally the more stress you put on your system, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like you get to this stage where it's an overload.
Yeah.
And for me, my mind would, you know, I was kind of conditioned to just push harder and train harder, but it got to the stage where my body was like, fuck this, you know, you're out.
Yeah.
And I was in bed for 6 months just trying to rejuvenate. So at that stage, Mick Fanning was training with a lady named Jan Carton, and
What was the name of that clinic? Was that the
Czech Australia?
Yeah, Czech, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have heard about that.
Yeah, which was actually just down the road from here.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, at one stage. He put me onto her, and that's where I had to learn. I had to learn about all these things I mentioned, you know, what food I was putting in my mouth, how I was thinking, what my beliefs were around training, how I was training, and I was obviously overtraining. And so I had to really map out all of that side of it and take a deep dive into myself and, you know, am I going to continue doing this? Am I going to beat my head against the wall and be stuck in bed again? Or am I going to learn about the different stresses on my body? So, mate, she had me practicing things like breathing and relaxing, going within, eating right, and it was just such a drastic change for me. And at first I was like, you know,
seems like hokey.
Yeah, why am I on the floor breathing when I should be, you know, doing some weighted pull-ups and getting strong for my sport?
Yeah.
And, you know, I had that mindset, but I still had that mindset while I was down and out. So, Yeah,
Like you didn't
had
have
to
like
be.
a rebuild mindset when you sort of,
Nah.
that's like what you had to have. It was like, okay, I've got 6 months of like, I can't do what I did before. I have to do different rebuilding type activities, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I was kind of forced to learn about this stuff. And yeah, that was the best thing that ever happened to me, basically, because
That's crazy, eh?
yeah, for me, having that chronic fatigue was like pivotal moment, and is why I'm so invested and in love with researching and practicing things on myself and applying to, you know, my clients and athletes. And just approaching that, leaving no stone unturned is kind of how
And
I think about it.
being open to like everything.
Yeah, being super open to everything. And so that's kind of what catapulted me into this journey of being a coach and investing in myself, really.
The one thing that really struck me with you is that Harley, I've known Harley since he was a 14-year-old kid, and he never trained ever, and he didn't like training, and it was almost his thing was that he was the best dude in the world without training, and that's like the flag he'd almost put in the ground, and people knew him as that guy.
The identity.
Yeah, and I think he was like sort of proud of that in a way. And then the thing that really made me like think you had some really crazy shit going on is the fact that he was this kid that had never trained his whole life and been notorious against training, to now a guy that genuinely loves to train. And it was you, and I'm like, what did he do? Like, how did that happen? How did you create this guy that now loves to train?
It's, I suppose what sent Harley to me was his ACL,
His knee, right?
His knee injury. He came across me through social media and hit me up, and I didn't know Harley, and we came in, had a good chat. I loved his vibe, and he seemed just really motivated to get right and want to get stronger than before. And he was carrying a little bit of weight. He was...
He definitely was a bit of a chubber back then. I can't even picture that Harley now.
Yeah. But he was just really, what started it, I suppose, was his investment in wanting to get his knee right.
Yeah.
And the motivation behind getting back out there and wanting to, again, win another world championship. So his motivation with that started it. And I suppose it was on the journey of him and I together was that we could be, that I could be relatable with him in terms of, what it's like to be down and out, and, have some compassion for where he was at in that stage. And, I think with that, he became a lot more maybe open-minded. And, one of the things I always love to talk about with new clients is how coachable are you? And that means, number one, what's your willingness to learn? Number two, how open-minded are you? And number three, who do you listen to? And, I think we had that discussion early in the piece, and he maybe took like a bit more of a conscious understanding of, oh, wow, okay, what is my willingness to learn? And I think that just opened his mind a little bit to some things. And we were doing the right things physically, and we were applying what we needed to do to get him back on track from a physical level, which I'm sure we'll dive into a little bit. But he just grabbed it by the balls and wanted to eat right, wanted to move right, wanted to also learn how to work in. As I was discussing before, it's like
instead of just work out.
That's
a cool concept.
I think
is that something that is like one of your main philosophies, would you think?
100%.
Like work in and work out?
Yeah. Everyone knows how to work out.
Yeah.
Everyone knows how to work out. But to what degree do you know how to work in? Because it's how you work in that I believe actually makes you a world champ or helps you move towards your potential, whether it's from a business perspective or from a whatever, the relationship you want to have. Like you got to understand yourself. You got to understand your own energy, and that requires working in.
So where did you start with that working in then?
That was.
And do you remember what you were like before, and now in hindsight that you've got to a different place? When you look back, what was some of the stuff where you're like, that was really wrong?
Yeah, mate. When I was talking about my chronic fatigue, if it was before that, I had the belief. So it really lies in our beliefs. And for me, my belief was that working out, or training or working hard, is the only way to make progress. But as we all sort of know, is that muscles don't rebuild when you're actually training. They break down. It's when you're recovering that muscles rebuild. And it's that same concept for your energy too. If you want to be energized enough to be on the start line of, or when the horn goes off, you need a balanced energy system and a balanced energy within yourself. So the concept of working in is something that needs to happen, and we're cottoning onto that a lot more with the understanding of sleep cycles and circadian rhythms. That's a form of work in.
Yeah.
A lot more people are becoming open-minded to things like meditation, or I practice Tai Chi for one, as an energy building exercise. And just tuning out to all of the distractions we also have.
Mm-hmm. That's my biggest thing at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that's holding me back is just distractions, constant things like pulling me away from the stuff I'd rather be doing.
Yeah.
Because I do love like the stretching. I've been getting way more into reading. Like the only thing, and I've always read, but the only thing I've been buying lately is I've been on Amazon buying books. Every time I hear someone recommend a book that I respect, and I've heard other things about that book, I've been ordering it. So now I've got like a stack of books piling up, but I'm still not all the way disciplined to tuning out those distractions yet. And like today I was watching YouTube, and then I looked at my book and I was like, like it wasn't a thing to just not, to move away from that distraction and then go into what it is that I actually wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, funny we're kind of on this subject. It was only this morning that I seen the concept of dopamine fasting. And what that means is that we live in a very technological age, right? And we have a lot of distractions. We can pick up our phone and step into Instagram, but every time we do something that's kind of a short burst of a short little hit, well, we're getting a hit of dopamine, and that's the chemical in the brain that makes us, happy or spikes us. We get that when we are watching social media, but we get that when we eat certain foods. We get that when we watch TV or Netflix or movies. We get that through distractions, basically. But what the concept of dopamine fasting is that you give yourself a period of time of laying off distractions. So putting away the phone for a certain period of time, and maybe exchanging that for just going for a walk on the beach, something that doesn't require action. Eastern kind of philosophy would talk about that as just being, and just practice just being. Like those kind of old Tao philosophies and Buddhist philosophies. Stuff like that. And I think it's so important to, check in with maybe a bit of a dopamine fast here or there. Whether that means that you revolt against in yourself being on your phone between, 7 at night until you go to bed, or you're not allowed to look at it until you wake up and have your drink of water and have your breakfast and look at it after that. Or whether it means just, getting back out to nature or jumping in the ocean, just things like this that are going to be so critical to our health as the technological age ramps up even more and more and more. It's not to say that the technological age is a bad thing. It's just to say, how are you balancing yourself enough in these times?
Yeah.
Because it's so important for our health. More and more people are getting the shit that I had when I was 16, 17.
Yeah.
And I constantly have to check in on my energy and whether I'm spending too much or not. Because, I can get hyped up and I can love life too, but if I spend too much time doing workout things, then, I too fall in a hole.
Yeah, yeah.
So
it's so interesting, the technological age really hasn't been around for that long. And I think that the worst of it has come from the iPhone. Since the iPhone was invented, I don't think technology in quote unquote was that bad. Like, I might sit down and watch 2 hours of TV a day. As a kid. That would be from 6:30 when the news come on and you sat down and mum was making dinner. You sit down and then maybe 8:30 was bedtime. That was technology, really.
Yeah.
And it's like, for those hours, it's not going to be a crazy impact on your life. There's 22 other hours a day where you're not being distracted, like you said. But dude, my fucking screen time on my phone is 6 hours. It's hectic.
Yeah.
And I'm not a scrolling person. I don't sit and look at Instagram that much. But it's all for me, it's all the posting and replying to comments and DMs and trying to run the business side of what we do. And then I'm on a computer when I'm not on my phone. And it's I just think that it hasn't been that long since it's happened, but there's already such a heavy pushback.
Yeah.
We just went all in on the phones and the computers and the emails and now with Netflix and YouTube. And it's a really short concentrated time, but already a pretty big pushback.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're exactly right. And we're adaptive beings too. But yeah, it also takes time to be adaptive, So, if this is happening really, really quickly, then, to be adaptive this quick, it can be is difficult for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a balance within it all, I really feel. And yeah, just becoming good planners in a way too.
Yeah.
I totally agree with getting back to people, and constantly there's a lot of different forms of getting back to people too. You're getting back to someone on Instagram, on email, on Facebook, on text, calls, all different things. So one of the things I'm practicing is trying to consolidate that and, maybe send, if I've had something from Instagram, it's hey, hit me on the email. From Facebook, it's hey, here's my email, get back to that. And try and bring conversation into one streamline type of place, so that in my mind it's not scattered, which it sometimes feels like.
Well, a good analogy for it is when you hit this little half swipe up on your phone and you can see all of your apps. It's if there's all of those apps are open, that's sort of in your mind, I need to check WhatsApp, I need to check Snapchat, I need to check Instagram, so all those tabs essentially are open in your mind. Because I always try and think about my brain as a computer that has a limited amount of RAM, it has a CPU limit, it has a processing limit. I really always try and revert back to my brain, and even more so an iPhone, I guess, because you've got a battery life on that iPhone.
100.
And it's the more apps are open, the quicker your battery will drain. So I like to think about my brain literally in terms, it's kind of ironic because it's you're trying to move away from that.
Yeah.
But I think it's the stuff that you do to make your phone last longer and work better would be the same that you do for your brain. Close all the apps, turn the brightness down, stop the notifications, whatever you do on your phone to make that battery last longer works for your brain too, in my head.
Yeah, and mate, I'm all about that analogy. I'll share kind of a little bit of my philosophy of how I think that I work with people, because I like what you just said there. And when I'm working with physical body and a mind as well, I like to map out or help map out what's going on within somebody's body. So I'll do a 3 or 4 hour assessment as the first thing that happens. Yep. And it's basically thinking about the body and each individual is having their own software. And each individual has their own software, and each individual has their own kind of blueprint as well. And the blueprint would be represented as that individual's potential. And my job is to dive into the software and check out and search for where the glitches are. Where are the glitches physically? Where are the glitches mentally? And how are those glitches preventing you from being at your potential? And if I can help to map out what we need to do physically, whether we need to mobilize certain things, stretch very specifically, or create stability or strength in a certain area that helps to resolve that glitch in the software, then that's what we've got to do. Or whether there's certain beliefs that lie within the subconscious, within the mind, that are limiting or sabotaging the person's potential, then let's take a dive on where those glitches are too, and let's work and create a plan on how to resolve and bring that person back into their highest potential, basically. So a similar analogy of working with our bodies as software or as technology.
The way that you talk and the way that I see you training people, because I follow your Instagram, I'm always looking at your stuff, and it's like it seems like the way that you teach and coach is uncommon. So it's like, it's interesting to me that you go to school to get a certificate or whatever, and it's like you get given these base set of skill sets that every other trainer leaves with. But then to become a person like you that will, you're training like Mick and Harley and these elite guys, like you've got some swimmers that you work with that are like Olympic dudes, and it's so to get to that level, how much more research do then you have to do? Like it almost, people come to you for what you've done outside of training once you've kind of left school or whatever. And it just seems so interesting that, like the deeper you dive and the harder you go with like trying to build up yourself and your own knowledge, that is what then credentials you, because it's like there's a base level credentials that anyone can get, but to be at your level, it's so much more investment from yourself.
Yeah, I can only teach someone to be like me.
Yeah.
It's all I can do. So the level that I work on myself or go inward within me is to the degree that I can take somebody. I can only take somebody as far as I have taken myself.
Yeah.
So if I want to be the best version of me as a coach, then I got to take a deep fucking dive in myself.
Yeah.
And analyze and be the technician on myself mentally and physically. So yeah, that's the belief that I hold.
Yeah.
Which drives me to not be perfect, but to work on my potential. And then therefore that has that ripple effect into who I work with. So
yeah, it's so interesting because you can see so many trainers, and it's like it's the same sort of reps or the same activities, the same, like you sort of see it everywhere. And then you see a guy like you, and I think I was wondering too, maybe to go back to the Harley stuff, it's like, did he fall in love with training, obviously with the style, but it seemed like you just weren't thrashing him at the start. It just seems like these movements where you're like, oh, that I could see that doing something, but it's like, he's a world champion wakeboard guy. It's like, shouldn't you be working harder than that? So is it like this sort of slow build and these like different mobility and strengthening exercises that don't look very hard, but it seems to have been something that like really let him fall in love with training? Because I think that the average person will go to training, get fucking slammed, and then struggle to recover for their next session. And then it just becomes this like beat down.
Yep.
And it's hard to love something that is constantly beating you down. So it seems like your philosophy and the style that you train, even though it doesn't look like it's crazy effective, it sort of looks counterintuitive.
And you're exactly right. And a very common comment that I get is, fuck, that's way harder than it looks. But yeah, to break down the journey for Harley is that, and with anyone with an injury or anyone that is feeling limited with their physical body, that assessment that I mentioned is me looking for where the imbalances lie within the body, what's going on from a postural perspective, because posture is a thing to constantly go back to if somebody's, say, limited in their rotation. If someone's got a huge kyphosis or
is that shoulders forward?
That's shoulders forward and a big round back, then their rotation is very limited. But if you work on all of the muscles and the mobility that pulls that person into being more open, and then you test their rotation again, it's far greater.
Yeah.
That's just one little example of how posture...
And that happens all through the body, right?
All through the body. It's
very rarely like if you've got a sore hip, it's a hip problem.
Yeah, I think of the body globally. I think of it as... something up here affects what happens down there. An example of how maybe the neck has a hierarchy over the hips is that if somebody's first vertebrae is out and they have like a slight subluxation, whether it's tilt or being pulled across, then the hips have to sit underneath the head. So the hips will migrate to the left as well. Now, what does that do to the spine in between? Well, it creates different curvatures.
Yeah.
So you can and that imbalance that now lies in the hips, you can do all the hip shit you like. You can stretch that thing, mob that thing, try and create stability around the hips. But if you've got this first vertebrae subluxation, then you need to go to that and you need to address that and pull that head back into being in neutral again, so the hips follow, and then you watch what happens to the lower back pain or the hip issues. So it's a jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly,
it's like a whack-a-mole sort of situation, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And, I'm never going to stop learning about the body. I don't fucking know it all, but I'm so interested in the jigsaw puzzle of it and how things work and coincide with each other.
It hasn't been until I started jiu-jitsu that I got as into my body as I have, because that's literally your protection. Like to stop getting the shit beat out of you, you just need your body to work. Yep. And it's like, as you'd know, being that you've started, it's like putting your leg into a certain position that requires a lot of mobility is the difference between getting past and then being pinned on your back in a super uncomfortable position where you're not in control. And it's like the win or loss of that particular scenario depends entirely on the mobility of your like femur's rotation in your pelvis. Yeah. So like to me, and I've noticed through my own, now I do a lot of stretching, I try and do a lot of mobility work. I know my head's definitely got a tilt to it. I know that I've got, some problems with my shoulders, but I can feel that. I think that because of the amount of times I've broken my collarbones, that there's like, it's actually pinches in here when I do try and stretch. So it's like, I've noticed so much now because I've sort of putting my body through these extreme tests. It just becomes so evident, all of the stuff that's wrong. Yeah.
And you can get super detailed, and there's a time and place for that if you are resolving, say, pain, or there's specific things that are limiting you, as the hip mobility example. But yeah, it's also a balance of not getting too caught up in being perfect as well, because again, that's never going to happen. You're not gonna have someone who's the straightest human ever, because one, we've got a big liver that sits on the right that influences our balance and our weight distribution, and we've got lots of asymmetries within the body. You kick a ball as a kid,
even with balance,
you become right-footed, then that plays on it too. But so it's finding the balance in that side of it as well.
So with Harley's knee then, so is there like a specific protocol that you've developed to deal with injuries, and sort of if that's the injury that there's certain specific things that you're going to try and do to sort of get him on the road, because you're doing the same thing with Mick Fanning with his ACL, right?
Yeah, there is specifics. As a generalization, first you must mobilize before you can stretch, because if a joint is immobile, then stretching's not going to do anything. So first you must mobilize, and then you must stretch and lengthen what needs to be lengthened, what's short and tight in the body. That could be influencing the increased pressure on Harley's ACL. Because in this example, we found that he had a lot more medial rotation or internal rotation through his hip. So that had an influence on where his body or knee would go during landing and impact. And if repetition after repetition and repetition of medially rotating and dropping in, that has an effect on the joint. And a move could be the straw on the camel's back. And boom, pop. So with finding these things out, I've got to search for where the immobility lies. And then I have to lengthen the specific things that might be increasing his internal rotation. And then after you've lengthened, then you move towards stability. So every joint has, its optimal position. And from a scientific perspective, that's called a joint centration. So joints need to be centrated. So now we need to create stability around the joint, and all the detailed, intricate parts of the body need to work to stabilize that joint specifically. And now you're having to start to work with the brain-body connection, because just say my shoulder sits forward like this, my brain thinks that that's what central is. But now we have to retrain the pathway from brain to shoulder to what new or the proper centrated position is.
Zero is.
Yeah. So that's where, as you described, these exercises that look intricate and detailed but, don't look overly hard. Well, those exercises become a lot friggin' harder when somebody's specific joint isn't used to being in that position. So people, find it difficult to stay in that position. If we use this shoulder analogy, that's where the shoulder is strongest for them at the time, but it's not necessarily in its central position, which means that there's shortness and tightness in one area, and you're long and weak in its opposite or antagonist.
Yeah.
And it's when you're long and weak and short and tight in different areas that you're moving the joint in, positions that put it under more stress.
Yeah, you have like less mobility in that position.
Yeah. It can be that, or some impact might just dislocate it or rupture it or whatever.
So how long, like if you just get an average person that comes in off the street and then they do have like the rounded shoulders or tight shoulders, head forward, because there is sort of like a classic postural, I guess like disease, I guess it would be like maybe the easiest way to say it. You've got like head forward, rounded shoulders, the spine's curved, and then your hips you've got like a weird tilt going on your hips. Like how long would it take for a person that is in the average case that's committed to training those type of deficiencies, how long does it take to transform into good posture?
Yeah, there's a lot of
very case by case.
Yeah, a lot of variables. My minimum of coming to see me is 3 months, but the average is 9 to 12 months that I work with someone. So yeah, you're looking within those sorts of ranges. In Harley or Mick's case, you're going from a total rupture in the knee back into needing to be very sport specific and heavy landing and things that, are really putting a lot of pressure back on that joint. So that time frame is very variable, but yeah, as a generalization, 6, 9 sort of months if you're really dialing it in.
Yeah.
Because the journey of it too, you be very phase 1, which is the joint centration part that I was talking about. But now that person needs to transition back into their sport. So exercise, the individual needs to progress with their exercises so that the exercises start to become a lot more specific to what you need to be doing back out on the playing field. So, towards the end of it, before Harley started wakeboarding, I needed to get him doing wakeboarding exercises to test out what level we're at with that knee. How to what degree can you land on that thing and eccentrically load a lot of that knee? And we had to figure that out before he was allowed to go, all right, now you can get out there again. So the journey is from being very detailed and specific through to being sport specific, and might not be sport specific. It might also be work specific. I work with quite a few dudes who live in the mines, and they do a lot of lifting and rotating and bending and twisting and things like that. So for me, I get to map out what that individual needs to work back towards. So we need to do specific bending, twisting, rotating, and lunging type movements that are going to get that person back into work a lot more functional than what created their pain or their issue.
Yeah. Is it almost pointless to go in the gym and do like your traditional lifting style of exercises if your joints aren't centrated and if you don't have everything in alignment and good posture and then go from there, if that makes sense?
See, I don't, I wouldn't say so. I would suggest people continuously check in on things like their posture and their form with exercises. I would say that would be the case if you're battling with an injury and maybe feeling like you're beating your head against the wall and continuing to try and lift heavy or do, some bigger complex movements. If you're finding yourself in that position, then yeah, maybe you need to take a few backward steps and work on stabilizing and checking in on what's happening with the body and build yourself back up to those things again. But if, again, because there is no perfect posture, everyone has their individuality with their bodies too. So somebody's round shoulders might work for them with the specifics that they are wanting to achieve. So yeah, again, a lot of variables.
Very case by case. With the so my general routine that I would do is every night I've got a lacrosse ball, I've got some little sort of jigsaw mats so that because we've just got timber floors, and then I'll get my right hip is like the worst one, and I feel like I've been trying to get my butterfly stretch to the ground. Basically, that's sort of like one of my flexibility goals. But I feel like the right hip, it just gets to a point and it's not stretching my groin anymore or like those muscles. It's just locked up in the hip. So then I'll get on my my lacrosse ball and I'll just get all in that joint and I'll work it around, and then I've got a so right, So then I get on the so right, and I'll sort of try and loosen up that right psoas muscle, which I do feel is tight.
Yep.
And then I stretch, and then it goes down, and I can get way deeper into the stretch. But it feels like it's just, that's the constant thing. It's like that hip doesn't get better.
Yeah. So if we go back to the kind of periodization progress that I was mentioning earlier, is that what lies before stretching or needing to lengthen is mobility. And in certain cases, that may mean certain manual work from a mobility perspective on the right hip.
Are you a fan of the lacrosse ball and all of those kind of stretching apparatus?
100%. Yeah, love it. But if there's the issue still kind of pops up, then you're looking at what maybe needs to be mobilized or stabilized in the system.
Yeah, because that's sort of where my head's at. Like, I've been getting a lot more into it lately, and it's interesting to figure out what's good, what's bad, my hamstrings are quite flexible, but then I can't do any side split at all, basically. Yep. So it's like they're so tight, but the hamstrings are good, and then my what's the piriformis muscle?
Yeah, in your butt.
Yep, I can go fairly deep into those stretches, but I've got so much tightness in the right hip. So I think in my personal journey of mobility, because I've sort of had in my goal, and I was going to ask you if it's retarded or not, but in 12 months to be able to do the splits.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a possibility, but that's sort of my goal, because I feel like if I can get to that, then a lot of other stuff will have to be mobilized, if that makes sense. Yeah,
definitely. If you feel your goal has a carryover function to your requirements, and for you, jiu-jitsu specifically, is that has a carryover. Your flexibility, range of motion through your hips is, as you were saying, to get
it's crucial.
So crucial to frame correctly, or to, get a triangle in a different position, or whatever. So that can be a really cool goal. If I was mapping out and getting really individualized with it, it would be, I'd be in my mind about, okay, from whilst I'm assessing you and checking in on what's going on with your body, is that lengthening going to maybe destabilize anywhere and have any issues elsewhere?
Yeah.
And really, check in with that as well. Does that make sense
that could also be an issue, right?
Yeah, because we can tie ourselves in knots, but that's not necessarily good for our body. And I think, I want to touch on yoga as one example, is that people might come to me and, say that, I've got this pain, but I'm very flexible and very mobile. I don't know what's going on. Well, in yoga, you might be stretching muscles that are already long and weak. And if you're stretching muscles that are already long and weak, you're destabilizing yourself further and further, creating more issues for yourself.
Yeah.
So you might be good in certain poses or be able to lengthen yourself in certain ways, but that might be further ingraining an issue for your body or for your stability. And that can be the same when we are stretching. We might feel like, fuck, I'm amazing at this stretch.
Yeah.
But, at the same time, it's like, well, what about its antagonist? Where are you more tight and need more lengthening? And maybe what you're good at stretching needs more stabilizing.
Yeah.
It needs to be strengthened a little bit more. So that's how, case by case, that's how individualized it can become.
Yeah, so I've been thinking that my next step with this whole mobility sort of goal of mine is I think I'm going to have to go now to somebody, because it's almost like I've not hit my limits. I'm sure I could push through it, but I can sort of actively feel like there's definitely some shit that's stopping some stuff moving, and that to me is like joints that aren't mobile all the way.
Yeah.
So it's like I think I need to diagnose those problems and then work on what is, like you said, short and weak, essentially.
Yeah, definitely. It's always good to have, it's very hard to look at our own bodies and know where the imbalances lie. I do a lot of stability and training on myself, but I also, get one of my mates who's also does a similar thing to me to check out my body and check in on where some of those imbalances are too. So yeah, it's always good to have that outside view and opinion on what's going on, and then to help somebody manually mobilize something is also something that's required.
Yeah, no, it definitely makes sense. And like I'm a big research person. Like when I have a topic that I'm interested in, I love to research and acquire knowledge on that. But I think that especially when it comes to the human body, there's, if you want to go into the YouTube rabbit hole and if you want to do that, there's a lot of great stuff. But at the start, you don't know what's good and you don't know what's bad. So you take on everything when there's a lot of people out there that really don't know what they're talking about. So like when it comes to the body, I just feel like to go to somebody like yourself or somebody that is a real professional at identifying those areas and then really giving you like a good target of where to go from there.
Yeah, and I mentioned before how I was talking about how coachable you are, I mentioned who do you listen to, and that's an important thing. If you were to go see your doctor about your health, you'd want to ask them to take their shirt off and show me your health, how you look, what your physicality is like, what your health's like. Because if you're teaching me and telling me about health, then show me that you live and breathe it. And
is that a big problem, do you think?
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge. Because
that's kind of what I was saying before, is like you are on such a extreme level of it's like you're on a knowledge quest constantly, and you're always learning, and you have such a calm way of delivering information. You don't speak with ego, and it's like, to me, that guys like you are super rare. To find someone that you can tell they do the work. It's just, that doesn't seem like commonplace.
Yeah, I suppose when you said knowledge quest there, maybe what I'm more on is more of a wisdom quest. I think of knowledge as for the head and wisdom for the heart. And wisdom is the integration of knowledge because there's a lot of fucking knowledge out there. And you can be very knowledgeable, but you got to integrate that into you and practice that, whatever it is. For whenever I'm listening to podcasts, I want to be, if I'm going to listen and listen to somebody I'm really interested about, then I want to observe what they're talking about and how I can integrate that into my life and turn that from knowledge into wisdom, because I've created an experience from it or of it. And I think that's something that we kind of need to do more of.
Yeah.
Is filter and work with all of the knowledge that's out there, and sit with what really resonates and what we love learning about, what your values are, and then really practicing integrating that and practicing what that person's saying or what that person's talking about, and put it into your system. Don't just know about it so that you can talk about it with friends and say that you know this, because knowledge is just knowledge and it's just for the head. But what more meaningful relationships are if two people are sharing more wisdom.
Yeah.
And that's something they're the people I love to hang around too, and when I said before that knowledge is for the head, wisdom is for the heart, another way, depending on how you look at things, is that you can say that knowledge is for the ego and that wisdom's for the soul.
Yeah.
Because again, if it's just knowledge for knowledge's sake, then it's for
it just becomes a shiny toy that you're showing.
Yeah, it's just you're doing that for how you're perceived in the world.
Yeah.
And how you look to other people. And yeah, there's a lot of that probably needs to be worked on, I feel.
Where do you go for that kind of teaching and that kind of learning? When did that sort of start? I guess it was back when you were when you got that 6-month period of sort of having to do that, but sort of what really was the stuff that first got you like, okay, I need to work on this?
Yeah, for me, it was my mentor. It was Jan. And there were certain times where she'd just stop me training and would stop and would sit down, and the session would turn into a chat session because she could see that we just weren't getting anywhere physically. There was no need to beat a dead horse, or maybe she could see that I was getting frustrated, not being able to do something or something like that. And that became an opening for her to open me up to understanding what I'm thinking and feeling, and how that is preventing
holding you back
my progress. So, man, we had, as a 16, 17-year-old, there was one day where, and I thank her so much, she sat me down for 5 hours and she just cancelled the rest of her day because there was a point she needed to get across. And from that day, it was like, I need to dive in to me and check in with me, because all the things she was saying, I was like, if I got real with myself, I was like, yeah, you know what? I am a fucking frustrated kid. Yeah, you know what? I'm, wanting to do this sport out of how I would look to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I'm fucking tired. And it's exactly what I needed to hear. I needed someone to get real with me. And it catapulted me into a journey of one of the first books that I read was by a guy called Deepak Chopra. It was called The 7 Spiritual Laws to Success. And it was kind of like 7 laws that Deepak had set out. And it, he would talk about quantum physics and quantum science. He would talk about energy, and he would talk about the unseen. So our thoughts, our emotions, that we don't see them, right? But they manifest from being something unseen into a physical outcome, whether that's me looking tense or being angry or whatever. So that dive of that kind of energy, kind of quantum world of was fascinating to me. So I started to see the power in the unseen and the power in my thoughts and things like that. So it just catapulted me into a journey of different books, wanting to learn more about that, sourcing different mentors that were living and breathing the same things. So that was quite a catalyst that time for me. And like I said, it was the best thing that happened to me.
It seems like you almost need to find a person, like what you said, as a mentor that is walking the same path as that you want to be on, but they're just quite a bit further ahead.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly. And I put it down to my mentors. I put it down to what I've learnt from my mentors. That day it was like, this is the best investment that I can make, is in myself. And I've just chosen what I want to learn about, sourced who's the best at that, and teach me and show me where I'm doing it wrong, and show me where I can grow and improve and make progress in that specific thing. And that's kind of the way I think about it.
I think that the one thing with me, because I've always been invested in, I think it's interesting what you said about knowledge is for the ego. I think that there has been times where I was trying to acquire knowledge, but I wasn't truly living it in the way that you're talking about. Like, I actually can relate to that. And then the connection back to the ego has been something that I've been well and truly obsessed with lately, probably to a fault at times, is the ego. And I think that the podcast forced me to do that, because I've said it on here a million times, like my biggest fear is people going, he's doing this because he wants to be, blah, 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 or all of the egotistical things that could be attached to that thing. But I think that really I love like to get here and to sit and listen to you with no distractions and nothing around, and you can be exposed to so many ideas. To me, it's so selfish for me, this process. But the ego side of it, I was like, okay, what are the things that I can do to really actively make sure that I am not speaking with ego, which I do all the fucking time. Like, I'm not perfect at all, but it's like I really am on this active mission now to understand the ego and to try as hard as I can to not live through that vessel, because I think that can take over people's lives. And I think more people live through their ego, talk through their ego, argue through their ego. I argue through my ego a lot. I'll just want to win that particular fight, as opposed to be a balanced, person in that sense. But it's like that to me, and the concept of it has just become so important. Yeah.
Oh, it's very, very important. And cool share, because we need an ego too. If we're talking ego and soul, they're two sides to the same coin.
Yep.
We have to, the way I think about it is that the ego needs to be a slave to your soul.
Yeah.
Everyone is an individual and has a soul's desire and drive. And I feel like it's kind of our mission to be able to align our ego to that. It's kind of like the two should click in.
The soul should drive the ego.
The soul should be the driving force.
It's like the ego's your Ferrari, but the soul's the one that should drive the Ferrari.
Yes, exactly.
Not the Ferrari driving the Ferrari.
No, exactly. Because if you do that, now you're on track. You're on to your purpose, your soul's desire, your goals, your mission. And it's been scientifically proven that people who are on their goals, mission, their desire from a deeper level are people who live more happy and content. So if you create that alignment between the two, then you're a driving force in this world. And it's super important, because it also brings us so much more ease to what we're doing. My mentor Joe, she has this concept, and it's beautiful. I check in with it all the time. You're in your ego if you are searching for acceptance, acknowledgement, appreciation, and approval outside of you. And to the degree that we are searching for that outside of ourselves is to the degree that we don't give that to ourselves.
Yeah.
So we don't we don't appreciate ourselves or acknowledge ourselves or approve or whatever the fourth one was that I've forgot. But yeah, to that degree that we don't give it to ourselves is to the degree that we'll search for it outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's the ego. And if that's the case, then we're going to have a hard time.
I think the thing that I struggle with though is like to appreciate myself and to approve of myself, and that to me feels like ego. That's sort of the catch-22 that I get stuck in. Like I had a conversation with Luke Cadell, who he came on the podcast on Sunday, and we were talking and we were just having lunch, and he's like, dude, you are down, and you're struggling to admit to yourself that you're doing certain things well and right. And I think that it's like there's a balance between being like genuinely, like I feel hesitant to genuinely approve of myself at times because I still feel so far away from where I think I need to be. Yeah,
because you've been conditioned to think that way, and you've been conditioned to think that I can only be, as we all are, we're all kind of conditioned that way, that we are conditioned to, that I can only accept myself when I reach a certain level. But that's the world's biggest illusion. It's the biggest distortion there is that we're not perfect until. Because the deeper that sits within us, the more we're just searching outside of ourselves for ourselves again. So it's because it's so deep and ingrained. It takes a time and a lot of awareness, and I'm not. That's not me saying that fucking I've got that, because I'm constantly checking in with the same thing.
I think that everybody always is though, right? Because I think, there's a yin and yang to everything. And I think that as, the further you go in one direction, I feel like the further whatever it is that you're trying to get away from, it's like the stronger pull that it has. You just now have more control over it, if that makes sense. Because you think in terms of like a jiu-jitsu analogy would be like a black belt. It's like the better he gets, the further away everyone else is, but that gives him the power to just destroy everybody else. So it's like, the further you get towards the way you want to be, the more in check you have to keep, and that's the stronger the pull to do what you're trying to get away from.
Yeah, for sure. There's a cool one thing that I like to work with myself and kind of introduce into clients is archetypes. So an archetype it's kind of like the roles that we play, and it's one word that describes a lot of traits for somebody. So if you were to say that guy over there has the athlete archetype, well then in your mind you run through all of the things that he probably does.
Yeah.
Okay, he probably trains hard, has to eat a certain way, sleep a certain amount.
He's talented.
He's talented, physically looks after his body, blah, 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 blah. There can be the mother archetype. There's archetypes for everything. If you think of the mother, it's like, oh, she's probably up at night. She's probably packing lunches, breastfeeding, whatever. It rattles off a lot in your mind. Well, there's, with all sorts of different archetypes, there's also ones that help us become more aware of ourselves. And there's a perfectionist archetype. But when we are the perfectionist, or we're living and that archetype is online for us, which it is for a lot of us, the perfectionist is just trying to manage shame. It's constantly just trying to manage where and when it feels shamed. And we're all born into that. We're kind of born into this realm of feeling that way. So I feel that it's cool to check in on those perfectionist parts of ourselves and see if, what am I trying to manage when I'm trying to be perfect? Because if I'm just trying to manage shame, then I'm trying to manage how I'm perceived in this world.
Perception, which
goes back to the ego.
Yeah. It's interesting. I had a conversation with a friend the other day, and it was about people that have abilities and talent and are intelligent, and because I think potential is maybe one of the most crushing things that anybody can be blessed with. The more potential that you have, then the more potential for failure, which would then induce that shame thing. And I think that so much, because I know in my life personally, I'm met with a lot of internal resistance, and it's a weird relationship, because on one hand I can be so productive and I can be so hardworking and I can commit to doing so much, but then I'm met with just insane amounts of resistance that are it's internal, and there's some days I literally you can't get off the couch and you cannot do anything, and that's such a weird juxtaposition, I think, to be like, you almost feel crippled by your potential, which then I guess is what you're sort of saying is like that perfectionism kicks in. It's because if people know, like, like how many people have you go like, man, he's the most talented dude if he'd just work hard and if he'd just, I don't think a lot of that is laziness. I think that is more the fear of like an extreme fear of failure because the potential to be great is so high.
Yeah, mate, on the money, because the thing that we're fearful of most is our potential. The thing we're fearful of most is our light, basically. And it's back to the conditioning thing. And
yeah, because we really are conditioned to like really be mindful of what people think of us. And because really that's how society functions. Society functions because we can all be together and think kind of highly of each other. And that's what sort of pushes society forward, right?
Yeah. Pushes us forward, but
then it's also what cripples us because the expectation is so high to perform.
Yeah, because and how it cripples is that individuals, when the ego kicks in, want to be perceived as being better than others, and it comes into this balance again. Is it better for the ego and how you're perceived, or is it better because you're pushing your potential and pushing the potential of what people can do? And depending on which intention you have determines how healthy it is.
So how would you then go about trying to reconcile those issues and stop looking for the outside approval and just doing the thing for yourself? Wanting to win a competition for yourself, wanting to put out a podcast for yourself, wanting to get in shape for yourself. What are the steps that you think you would need to take to start? And are there concepts that you think might help?
Yeah, I think first it's doing it for yourself, but at the same time it's kind of a service to other people as well. In a sporting performance perspective, is that if you're wanting to be the best in your sport, you're doing that for yourself, your experiences, and experience what comes with that. But you're also doing it to help people see the potential of where the body and the mind can go. And that's important because that keeps us growing. That keeps us moving forward. You know, the 2-hour, somebody just broke the 2-hour marathon record. And, you know, that's just showing our potential.
Yeah.
And if he did that, you look at the energy of that dude and he's like, he's not ego. He's like, there's parts of him that had the drive to do what he did because it's showing what we can do and the potential that we have. But if he was just purely ego-driven, then maybe he wouldn't have made that 2-hour record.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I think the thing with being very ego-driven is that you're biting your nose to spite your face in a way, because if it's only ego-driven, it's only for people's approval, then a lot of times that approval just doesn't come. And then you're met with challenges. And then when you're met with challenges, and like setbacks, then that is stuff that is perceived like negatively, I guess you'd say. So if you're only doing it for other people's perceptions, I think they're the kind of people that struggle to push through the hard times and when they are met with challenges. And I think that's why anybody in the middle of something, I think that money is a good example. The poorest of the poor are always very humble, relatively happy, because they've got nothing. They've got nothing to show. And then their ego's got nothing that's being sort of serviced. And then you've got the people at the top end of the spectrum, the Warren Buffetts, the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates, giving away billions of dollars, very philanthropy focused, and you see that there is no ego there because it's to me and the very wealthy people that I've had interactions with, they're just kind of over it. They realize that any of the material stuff, any of the accolades, any of the money in the bank, it's all sort of the same once you hit a certain point. And then they find that they're met with the same problems as if you didn't have any money. And then it's sort of, that's where they get a little bit detached. But it's the people in the middle. The dude that leases a Porsche. Or, you know, the guy that's on the world tour, but he's not one of the top guys and he's constantly got something to prove. I feel like it's always the people at the very top. And I think it's because you don't get to the very top with your ego as the driving force.
Yeah. No, exactly. And it becomes about an identity thing and being attached to an identity.
Yeah.
You know, if I have an attachment to being Taylor the coach, then everything needs to revolve around me being that. So if I was to say fall sick or get injured and not be able to work and I lose my identity and that puts me in a lot of pain and hurt, well, that's only to the degree that of my attachment to the identity of being a coach. The same as being a surfer or, you know, a wakeboarder, is that, you know, if you have such an attachment to that identity, then it's very difficult to have the deeper right intentions behind what you're doing. And that's why athletes have a hard time when they are injured.
Yeah.
Or
when they retire.
Or when they retire. You know, we see that a lot, is that they retire. Who are they now? Yeah. They don't realize that they're still themselves on that deeper level. Yeah. That they always have been, and that they have never been they have never been their identity. Yeah. It's only our minds that create that. Yeah. So when we don't have our identity anymore, then that creates a lot of pain, and people struggle. Yeah. So just like for you is like, who is Jace when he's not doing podcasts or doing jiu-jitsu? Yeah. It's a cool question to ask ourselves.
And it's almost like we do get more of a choice in that than we think, right? Because like the perception versus reality meme, like that's a pretty cool, like the reason that's so successful is because it's fucking bang on the money. Yeah. You know, like how I think I'm a training versus how I am a training or whatever it is. It's like we are so influenced by what we perceive other people to perceive of us. Yeah. It's a weird exchange of, we're not really getting first-hand information. It's like our consciousness is trying to perceive how other people perceive. That's not a very good, solid, like if that was anything in science, they'd be like, well, we're trying to figure out how, if it looks like how I think it looks from them, you'd be like, that doesn't really make sense. Yeah. So it's almost like you're better off to just only invest in cultivating your own true identity 100%. With yourself from the inside out, because we have so little control over outside in or in to out to in. Fuck yeah. Essentially.
Yeah, mate, 100%. I love that.
I feel like that's just a little light bulb moment for me.
Sick. Or I don't know if you've heard a dude called Dr. Joe Dispenza.
No.
He's really ahead of the game with neuroscience and a neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is the concept, or the now scientifically proven concept, that our brain is adaptable and we can rewire parts of our brain. If you were to think that you have a certain thought, well, in your brain there's neural pathways and synaptic wiring that solidify that thought really strong. Yeah. And if you think that thought constantly and constantly and constantly, then the stronger that neural pathway gets. And if it's a certain thought that isn't necessarily serving you, well, we have the ability to rewire our brain. And just like you work a muscle in the gym and it gets stronger and stronger, we can do that with our brains. And this is what Joe Dispenza is talking about. We have the ability to, say, work on not strengthening the negative thought and allowing that to atrophy
Yeah.
And then rewiring and strengthening more of what we do want. And that's what neuroplasticity is. So he talks about, when we're on the concept of reality, he says that it starts with a thought, and a thought turns into a feeling, and a feeling turns into an emotion turns into a mood turns into a temperament, a longer lasting mood,
Yeah.
and a temperament is our personality.
Exactly.
And our personality is our personal reality.
Yeah.
So the reality, or the lens that I look at life through, is due to this kind of linear approach that I have with myself. So if I draw it back into, well, what are my thoughts? What's my internal dialogue? Because that's influencing how I feel, my emotional state, my moods, my temperament, my personality, and how I look at life.
And then your personality is like your vehicle that you let people interpret you as a person.
Exactly. And so that's when you can start to read somebody without them saying something. It's like I can see, you can see the physical effects that your thoughts, feelings, and emotions have had on your being and your body. So it's powerful shit, because then somebody's thoughts and feelings are going to influence somebody's posture. If I didn't like myself and I felt like I needed to hide away from the world, then I might form a posture that's hiding or guarding my heart. And that increases the curvature in your back. It brings your head more forward. It rolls your shoulder forward. And now you've got shoulder issues. And now you've got neck issues. And all these problems going on.
And that is the picture that you're presenting to the world. And like you said, you can judge somebody based on how they look, and they don't even have to say something. You can tell. Like you see a lot of that with like really tall girls that don't play sport. If you see a really tall girl that plays netball, like at high level, she's very like proud and tall. And then you see other tall girls with around their short friends, and they're not wearing heels, and they're kind of trying to get on the level, and like you can instantly see like, oh, she doesn't want to be this tall. Because the tribal mentalities that we form of what the ideal girl is. Should look like,
she should look at this height and this weight and this skinny, and a boob should look like this, and a butt should look like that. And that's a tribal mentality that we create. And it now creates beliefs. It instills beliefs, and it instills
and then that
thoughts.
goes back to her thoughts,
And it goes back to her thoughts and her linear approach to her reality. So, it's if we can check in on what tribal mentalities we're kind of in and influence us, then we bring more awareness to how we run.
The thoughts thing is crazy. Like on the weekend, there's just a little thing that someone said, and it fucking lived with me all day, and I had a shit day, and I feel like everything around me turned to shit. And then I woke up on Sunday and I was fucking still shitty, and it was very eye-opening in a way, because it was like I knew this was going on, and I just didn't have the control that I wished I had over just this one tiny thing that was said, and I just stewed on it all day. And they're the times where you say like you've got to check in. That was a real reality check for me of like, I just let this thing fester, and I knew it was happening, and I watched it happen, and it still swept me away, and all of the emotions, and then the way that I was interfacing with the world, and then how I perceived myself. There was a real snowball effect, and it was so evident, and I know the exact moment and thought, and I knew what was going on, and I still couldn't change it.
It's
crazy.
It happens to all of us all the time, right? And one of the first steps in that that I've been taught and practice and love to share is that we have to just also acknowledge that that's how we feel. Because if we think that feeling that way is a bad thing, then we're also shaming ourselves for feeling that way. And now we're not acknowledging and accepting that that's just how I feel. And the acceptance part is the process leading back into being able to work on it. Because if I just try and work on it out of trying to just fix myself, I'm still working out of shame again. Here's my perfectionist kicking in again, just trying to fix me. So just acknowledging that that's, how you felt is kind of the first thing that we have to
and
practice.
How do you go about that acknowledgement phase? Because I think that I could sit there, like I felt like I knew what was going on, but I just still, I don't know, it's like I just couldn't let go of the thing.
Yeah. I love to take a third person view of myself. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Taylor is getting really frustrated about this. I wonder where that's coming from. I wonder why that's the case. That's okay, but I'm just interested and intrigued as to why that's the case. And when I take that third person view, it's kind of like I'm not my anger or I'm not my frustration. And it's a nice kind of halt on it. It's like it helps to go, oh fuck, wow, I'm feeling this way.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Taylor play that out in a specific way.
And then if you're being that third person view, you could almost be like, I've seen this movie. And it's like a choose your own adventure thing. Like, do I want it to be that movie that had that shitty ending? Or do I want it to be this movie where the hero fucking saves the day, as opposed to the dude just gets the shit kicked out of him? Because it's like, that's what I knew that I was in for one of those days. And I was just so and I was just like, I always try to be positive. I guess, I don't know, maybe not everyone does, but I feel like I try to be positive, and I couldn't fucking stop myself from saying negative shit, and, I got in an argument, just stuff like that. And it is so hard to detach from, like you said, that feeling when you are in that moment.
Yeah, it is, because from a scientific perspective is that when we feel that way, we start to flood our brain with the chemicals and hormones that put us in a fight or flight state. And we only have a short period of time
to make the call
to stop that or take that third person view before the brain is flooded with those chemicals and hormones.
That makes sense.
And if they're flooded with those chemicals and hormones, you've just got to accept that that's how you feel for now. Maybe we need to go for a walk or put ourselves and do something that we love, or just, go for a walk on the beach, or go for a swim, a surf, whatever needs to be done. But yeah, you've got 90 seconds before we start to flood the brain.
Really?
In with the chemicals and hormones that make us feel that way, that put us in a fight or flight state. And then from there, we have, it takes roughly 4 to 6 hours for those chemicals and hormones to die off and our body to move back to homeostasis.
Okay. Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, we had Rob Beams on the podcast. He's a health and wellness dude from the States, and he works with a lot of athletes as well. Awesome. And he was the one that really started talking to me about serotonin and the different stress hormones that you have in your body as well, with cortisol, and to start to think about your brain as this cocktail that's just like constantly feeding yourself with essentially like controlling your emotions. And it's like, if you think about when you like, okay, I'm going to do cocaine. It's like, what is going to be released into your body. If you've had it before, how you're going to feel. But it's like, if you start to think about that in terms of the shit that's already in your brain, like, I'm going to give myself a hit of serotonin, or I'm going to give myself a hit of cortisol. Like, if you can think about like trying to even regulate these chemicals in your own brain, then it's like you sort of, maybe we have more control than what we think. It's just that because we're not putting it in a line on a table and doing it, that we don't think we have that level of control. Yeah.
I think Wim Hof is a pretty cool example of being able to be in control with his ability to control his immune system and his nervous system. there's studies done on Wim where he has the ability to regulate his body temperature, which is a nervous system thing.
And an autonomous nervous system thing.
Yeah, was called the autonomous nervous system.
Yeah.
But now he has a new chapter in a biology book that kind of wipes that flaw of calling
so
it.
They're like basically accepting that it is now something that we can control.
Yeah, chapter 22 in the biology textbooks is a study on Wim Hof and his ability to control these things. And you know, one of the examples for the immune system is that they injected him with a dead strand of E. coli.
Yeah.
And he had the ability to flush that out without evoking the normal immune responses of throwing up, shitting on the toilet, fevers and so on, which is amazing. But the other fascinating thing was that he coached 16 other people
to do the same
thing. So, you know, he's not just a genetic freak.
That's the thing that we all like to think about. And I think that you can use that same thought process in everyday life. Like, I look at a guy like you, and then knowing the things that you do and the routines you have in place and the teachings that you are constantly like learning about, and it's like, I'm like, oh, he's just fucking, that's just him. He's just a genetically better person or whatever. And it's the same thing with Wim Hof. You look at him and it's like, well, it's got to just be his genetics, because I think subconsciously we all know that we have that in ourselves, and then that is that resistance. And it's like, this is too big of a project to undertake. And I feel like that at times with myself. I'm like, fuck, I just don't know that I could be the dude that gets up at 4 every day and does a half hour of meditating. But it's like, there's no genetic super freak shit going on there. It's just a person that has, whether it's been an instant choice and they've done it from day one, or it's a gradual thing that's happened over years.
Yep.
They have cultivated that for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I was the angriest, frustrated football little kid, competitive as all shit dude, you know, and I feel like I've really turned a lot of that around just with, you know, these practices that we're talking about. You know, I didn't like, you know, I was good at school, but, you know, I didn't really like English as one example. But whilst I've been working on myself, now I just fucking love reading, and I write every single morning, and I just have this fascination with language and how it interacts into our life. And if you ask me that I would be doing that, you know, back then, I'd be like, no way, I hate that stuff. But now I put that down to, the inner journey and the working on myself to having a fascination with these things. So, I really feel like I'm a bit of a 180 dude in that respect.
That's interesting, because you obviously, I haven't known you for that long, but you just get this persona, and you get that, you know, the perception of your persona, and you're like, he's always just been this super chilled, super balanced sort of guy that, you know, people seem to just gravitate towards for that energy.
But not always the case, I suppose.
But you're an angry cunt at one point.
I'm fucking psycho.
I wonder too with the jiu-jitsu stuff, because I love confrontation. I love to be in an argument. I love to get into a fight. I love to be in that kind of conflict state. I find it relaxing almost. Verbal arguments, not so much, but definitely physical altercations, I seem to relax in that state. But I feel like people that know me sort of know that that's my personality across the board, and I don't back down from basically any situation, and to a fault in a lot of scenarios. But then I look at that and I'm like, well, that works for jiu-jitsu, because I just love to get in there and fight people. So, and you're forced to do that every day. And then with you, it's like you're such a calm person that seems to be just balanced to the point where you're not even getting into confrontations. Like, how do you feel when you are in that fight scenario with jiu-jitsu?
my love for jiu-jitsu is the combination of it being a physical game of chess that requires a creative side to it.
It's an art at the same time.
Yeah.
Because there's so much instinct.
Yeah, exactly. It's not quite chess because you need to be creative and instinctual with what the next move is.
And there isn't a lot of rules.
Yeah.
Really. Especially when it comes to movement.
Yeah. So for me, putting my mind and body together and putting that to the test is a part of why I love jiu-jitsu. The confrontational aspect, we live in a third dimensional place, and we're always going to be in contact with people. We need to have relationships, and we need to know how to communicate and work with each other. And jiu-jitsu forces you to do that. With the confrontational part of it is that it's like a nice test for me every day when I do it.
What did you think before you started?
Of
jiu-jitsu, like before you went to your first class, what were your expectations of what it was going to feel like and what it was going to be? Because how long have you been doing it now?
I've been doing it for 7 months.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Man, I was pretty open with my expectations rolling into it. But, I knew there was a physical confrontational part to it.
Yeah.
And I knew that it required a tactical part to it. I knew that it required me to have to be calm and centered enough to learn what I had to learn. And I was just open and excited to what it was going to be.
Yeah.
And my first class was like, wow, I've got a lot to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, you got that feeling of like
I got that feeling of this is a long-term journey.
Yeah. And there's definitely a feeling of like helplessness too, where you're like, I probably should know this.
Yeah.
When you see just how bad people can literally helpless against people, and to have that feeling, I think that was one of the things for me where I was like, I need to learn how to be able to do that, but more so I need to learn how to have people not do that to me, essentially, because it was scary just how
vulnerable.
Yeah. And like completely out of your control something could be. And it's like, you're not really going to meet a dude on the street. Like what's the chances of running into a black belt in the street and then getting into a confrontation where that person would do that thing? It's like, it's pretty low, but it's so intriguing that level of human performance is out there, and you could become subject to that at some point.
Yeah, exactly. It's a perfect mix of a sport, isn't it? Because you got to bring that warrior aspect to it, but you've got to have a sense of vulnerability and no ego approach to it too. And what a mix that is. There's not many other sports that force you to bring both of those aspects. Yeah,
no, I totally agree. I've been thinking about it so much lately with that, especially now because I'm more fitting into the middle of the spectrum. I think that at the start you don't get a choice with the ego thing. You get humbled basically every day. You're always the nail and you're never the hammer. And now I'm in the middle of the bracket where there's essentially half of the people where I can do whatever and I can be that guy that can have that control and then exercise an ego to a point where they don't have the ability to control what I do. And then I've still got that today I got fucked up. I had to roll 3 black belts and a brown belt who is the best in Australia. And it's like, that might have been day one jiu-jitsu for me. Might as well have been. But it's like, I think it's when you do get that understanding, you sort of, it's like a responsibility, and then you're like, this is a crazy thing, because today it's just a roll, and you don't know what you're going to get. It's a roll of the dice. I got 3 black belts and a brown belt. had nothing all day, just got fucked up. But I could have gone there and rolled with 4 white belts.
Yep.
And then you get to make a choice of like, do you want to be an egotistical piece of shit to these dudes? Or do you want to have respect for them and try and develop their game, expose yourself to your weaknesses, so then you can accelerate your game. So,
well, I was just about to say, which approach would be a faster learner? The latter would be, for sure.
And that is, like you said, that's that forced introspection. I don't get a choice. Like I could not have left today's training session with any form of ego. Like I got fucked up. So it's forced on you. There's no, because you get those people and they're like, they can get their ego stroked even when they lose. And it's like, I just don't know that you get that ability with this.
No, exactly.
Is it something that you want to keep, like you're going to keep really trying to pursue like as a constant thing?
Yeah, I think it's integrated into being quite a habit for me now, and the love of the journey of, continuing to develop those 2 aspects that we mentioned, and to keep learning. And it's, for me, it's getting funner every time. Learning different things and applying them, and practicing how my memory and being switched on and agile enough to jump on opportunities. It's getting better as I go.
Have you found that you've had an advantage with your level of like mobility and flexibility and strength? Like, can you feel it really lending to the sport?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, big time. At the moment, I love playing on my back and taking that sort of approach, and super mobile, so I love a triangle.
Sick.
And I'm finding I'm putting some higher belts in situations that I wouldn't be able to if I wasn't as mobile or as onto it.
Yeah, that's been my big thing with the flexibility side of things, is that, and especially too, because I think you come across most black belts that have reached the top level of in terms of the belt system, and they're all of like really good mobility, really good dexterity, really good flexibility, but I don't necessarily think they've all trained that. I just think that over years that it takes to be a black belt, they've been physically stretched and maneuvered to the point where it's just opened them up over such a long time. But the interesting thing is that I think the mobility and the flexibility and the control over each limb individually lends themselves so much more to their overall performance than just the technique that they've acquired as a black belt. So in my head, I'm sort of trying to run an experiment on myself, is to, if I can have that black belt level mobility, flexibility and dexterity as a blue belt, then what does that look like?
Yeah, opens up the potential.
That's where my head's at with it,
Yeah, it's like if you are on the journey of a black belt, then along the way you're finding out the positions that you need to get into, or the positions where you're not mobile enough and where you got caught out and how that was a physical thing. And it's like, I'm going to fucking train that thing because I'm not getting caught like that again. And you can see, like, have you watched much of the high level no-gi stuff? Like the 80cc level? Like you see guys when they take the back, and it's like they've got that top hook, and it's the leg is circling, and it's literally looks like they're just using their arm, and it's so flexible and it's so mobile and so controlled that it's like they're playing with 4 arms, and I'm playing with 2, essentially. It's so crazy to watch that control. Gnarly, hey, and then what a connection from brain to body that is too. Your kinesthetic awareness. It's like, using Harley as an example, his ability to be upside down, inside out.
So crazy.
That's his kinesthetic awareness, and how refined that's got to be to land exactly where it needs to land. Well, it's like a top level, no-gi jiu-jitsu guy. He could probably pick things up with his toes and use his feet for hands, because he's had to tune into that feeling and that wiring of how he uses his legs. So, and I've noticed, like, I even watch matches now, like stuff from nationals, because I had a couple of triangle wins there, and it's like
if you filmed me doing a triangle 2 years ago, it was this slow, clunky.
Yeah.
I'm using my hands, and there's all this stuff going on, and now it's just such a quick movement, and it is insane it's inspiring too. Like I let that stuff inspire me to keep pushing and keep. Again, I think I like what you said before with the marathon runner. It's more about potential, like exploring that human potential, and it's exciting to get better at something. And I think that is what pushes that continual progression, is like when you're genuinely excited about those little details, and that they're the things that can keep you coming back for more.
There's a really cool book, an audio book called The Art of Learning, and I'll just get up write that down. The author, Josh Waitzkin, The Art of Learning. And
are you more of an audiobook guy?
I'm a bit of both.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'll have some audios on the run, and then some and some books to lock into.
And what are you reading? What are you listening to them through? Like Audible or?
Yeah, that one's through Audible.
Okay.
And he was a professional chess player, and what he had come to realize that he wasn't necessarily good at specific things, but what he was amazing at was learning. And then he became profound in his practice of Tai Chi, and there's a Tai Chi martial arts practice called touch hands, and he became American champion at that as well. But it was all to do with how he processed learning and how he took that on. And it's a really cool book for the jiu-jitsu people out there to be able to understand the intricacies of learning at another level.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to get that book. I've struggled with the audiobooks. I can listen to podcasts, but I find that I struggle a little bit with the audiobook stuff. But maybe I just need to do it while walking, or, something where I don't have other shit kind of going on,
Yeah, it's that, and also... Yeah, if there's one that I really need to know and get to know, I'll get the book.
Yeah,
because you can sit and highlight, rewrite, things like that.
Yep.
It's a bit hard to start and stop and listen and write, when it comes to the audiobooks.
How much are you reading these days? And where do you try and fit reading into your schedule? Because you're busy, you got a kid.
Yeah. So, I'm constantly reading, and that's a more of a late afternoon, nighttime type of thing. Meditation is a practice for me in the morning, and writing.
Yep.
The reading's more of that afternoon thing.
With the meditation and the writing stuff as well. So what are you trying to achieve with your writing? Because I've been experimenting with a little bit more of just general journaling. I don't really have a structure to it yet. I miss some days. I've got a red book that I keep on my desk, and that's the front of it is my to-do stuff, and then the back of it is my journal. But there's recently I haven't wrote in it all week because it's just been under some stuff on my desk, so it's not fully in my brain yet to where I'm intentionally seeking it out and doing it. It's more of still a fuck, that's right, I need to do that. But so what are you trying to get out of your writing sessions? And are you going writing and then meditation?
I'm going meditation, then writing.
Okay.
And I suppose my idea of what success is getting to know myself, is to the level that I know myself. If I know myself a lot, then I know why I make the choices I make. I know what more of the optimal choice is for me in any given moment. So my process of meditation and writing is my meditation is kind of just connecting in with myself a little bit more and getting to a stage where I feel like there is no distraction, or I'm now more in my internal environment versus still remaining in the external environment. So that requires me to remove sensors and things like that.
Are you listening to any music or any guided stuff?
Yeah, some guided stuff. A nice place to start with some guided stuff is the Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yep.
That guy. He has some really cool guided, whether it's visualization or whether it's a creative process. He's big on creating your future reality now in the present, and that's through dropping into a theta brainwave state, and then he guides you through this, but a process of aligning the feeling and the emotion with that future event or goal that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And through that process, you start to, it's a little bit deeper, but you start to step more into the quantum world, and that's where time doesn't exist, and you are in your inner world, and you have the ability to create from that present moment.
Yeah.
My example of that is during my racing days of triathlon. The Noosa Triathlon was an event coming up, and leading into it over the months, I just felt so locked into this race. Like my mind was on it, and I was just, it was my focus, hyper focus. And every day I was training and training hard, but I would tap into these visualizations of the race whilst I was training. And there was moments where I was like running along Hedges Ave here on the Goldie, and I'd just have fucking tears running down my face because I was just so in my internal world of locked into the emotion that I had, crossing the line with my hands above my head. There was times where I was out riding and, same thing. I just had music pumping and I was so locked into this feeling that it was so clear to me, this visualization, and it was a daily thing. And the same thing would occur. It was me and a fellow athlete that I really looked up to, and we were running together with a K to go, and he was next to me side by side. I could visualize the day. It was a little bit rainy, and the crowd was in this position, and my family and friends were like just to the right of the grandstand, and the commentator was right at the end, and in the visualization I crossed the line the same every time. It was like I was just locked into this same dream, but it was whilst I was training.
But it was one you were cultivating yourself.
But it was one I was kind of bringing on myself.
And you were getting hyper detailed as well. Look at the commentator, to hear the voice, to see the banners.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't just like a scarce visualization of like, I'm just going to cross the line first.
Yeah, no, it had detail. It had intricate parts to it.
Did it get more detailed the more you thought about it?
Yep, it did.
And is that what you think is the trick?
And the consistency, the practice of it, or the, you can think it once, but is it, ingrained into you? And anyway, come to race day, I had the start that I'd visualized. Through the middle part of the race, I was in the position that I'd visualized, but where I really locked into was that last part, that last K. And I found myself with that guy next to me, and it was the same day. It was a little bit rainy, and the crowd was packed like I'd visualized. And then my family and friends ended up being in that position that I'd visualized them. And then I crossed the line with my hands in the position that I had also visualized. And it was this weird as fuck moment of like deja vu. And it was like emotional and like, holy shit, I've been here before type of feeling. And it wasn't until later years that I had come across this Dispenza guy, and his urge to show what I had gone through in a scientific way. And I found it pretty fascinating, and something that I love to share with clients and athletes, and take people through that visualization process.
Yeah. There's definitely, or there has to be some form of like resistance at the start. If you hear that story and you're a person that is a long way away from achieving something like that, someone that they know they need to work out more, they just have like a gym membership and it's like 1 or 2 days a week, and it's like they're struggling to really get into it. I think that there is a certain level of resistance to hear stories like you want to push back against a story like that. Or when someone tells you about their amazing experiences meditating, you want to push back against that because again, I think it's that subconscious thing of like you feel so far away from it. Did you have those same sort of resistance towards, like, you'd hear someone talking about meditation or visual and you just were like, it's fucking hokey, dude, like, and then at the start, maybe the first 20 times you meditated, you were just like, what the fuck am I doing?
100%.
You know, so like, because I think that's one of the problems, that not a problem, but it's like you hear the end result because people are only sharing it when they get to the level that you're at with it because they really believe in it. But for someone that doesn't believe in it, they just pass it off as hokey shit. Yeah. So it's like, did you still have those same feelings and, you know, that long period of time of just going like, this is fucking pointless?
Yeah, definitely. It takes like a level of trust in a way too. Kind of
for sure.
Back to that who do you listen to thing.
Yeah.
Because is that person sharing their meditation examples and experiences out of ego?
Yep.
Like, look what I can do.
Because that happens a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in the yoga, meditation.
Fucking
like
oath.
That space just, it seems so fucking corrupted with like these people that are just telling you shit for like their own purposes.
The paradox of that spiritual realm is that they're the ones who are tripping all over their own fucking egos.
Yeah.
And now I'm not
putting crystals up their pussies and shit.
Yeah,
super weird.
I'm not discounting like that realm, but it's like check in with your ego on it too, because someone can want to be spiritual out of their identity and ego.
Yes.
Look how spiritual I am.
Woke as fuck.
Yeah. But that's just as bad as the ego of someone who's not spiritual and you know, doing their thing in a low vibe way.
Yeah.
So you're just the same if you're coming to it with that intention.
It's ignorance as well.
Yeah, exactly. So if someone is telling that story from a place of ego, like, look what I can do, then it doesn't have the right intention, and therefore you get to assess the degree that you're going to listen to that. But if somebody's like, you know, maybe saying it out of, you know, this is, like we said before, this is our potential, and coming at it with that more of helping kind of attitude, then
that stuck with me when you said that.
Maybe that can morph some trust, and if that trust starts to sit and morph inside of you, then it becomes a process of stepping into the unknown and practicing what someone is telling you.
Because everything at the end of the day, like, now that you're saying that, everything comes down to the trust. Like, I trust that Fabio Galeb is a legitimate black belt that will give me the training that I need to become that level. Like, I've got that trust, but I haven't thought of it in that way. I've just thought, I'm just doing this thing. But especially, and this is one of the things where, like, I know I talk about the jiu-jitsu side of things a lot, but I've been exposed to a lot of lessons about myself because I'm not the super consistent dude. Like, I would say I'd be consistent in terms of like living for my ego in a lot of ways years ago, but it's like now I've been consistent in this thing, and I've done what people have told me that know a lot more than me, and I've taken all of the beatings on board and all of the lessons on board, and now I'm hitting, like I said, that middle ground. Obviously still so early in the stage, but there is more of a ground now where it's like I've gone through that first bit. You know, I've punched through that first bit of the ceiling. And now it's like you're up in this different sort of atmosphere or whatever. And then you're still going. And there's still, you still don't know a lot in this particular space. But now I can look back and I do go like, I did put trust in this. I did listen to the lessons. Like, you know, that's one of the things that like Harry Bink was telling me about, is skydiving.
Yeah.
He was so excited about it, and he was so into it because he'd had this realization of like, he was frothing on, I could only get better at this the more I do it.
Yeah.
Like you can't learn this any other way.
Yeah.
And I think that is very similar with jiu-jitsu. Like you have to do it. You have to be fully on the road. And I think now that I've experienced that with jiu-jitsu, and I have pushed through that, I'd say the first barrier. And, you know, there's so many more to go, but it's like now I've burst through that. I'm like, fuck, this is everything.
Yep.
Everything is this journey,
100%.
Whether it's meditation, whether it's mobility, whether it's breathing, whether it's, you know, yoga, anything is like, you have to trust, commit to the process, and fight through the initial resistance, because even people like yourself with the meditating, you've pushed through that resistance from the start, right?
Yeah. What you're describing is the 4 modes of consciousness. So to begin with anything, we are unconsciously unconscious.
Yeah.
We don't know that we don't know. And then you become consciously unconscious.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, I know that I don't know. And then you become consciously conscious, meaning I know that I know. And then you get to the stage where you become unconsciously conscious, and it's that you don't know that you know.
Fuck, that's sick.
And
that's so sick.
And it's with everything.
Yes.
It's like, you don't know that you don't know that move. You don't know that you don't know what meditation does. Now you know that you don't know. And so now I've got to put in the fucking work and the effort to know that I know. And now I've got to trust and put more energy and effort into it so that I get to the stage where I don't even know that I know that. And that's our consciousness.
That's such a fucking sick way to look at that.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I could have fully understood it, because I think I'm in stage 2.
Yeah.
Basically. Like, I'm living in stage 2 in so many aspects of my life. And I don't think I've ever been as excited to reach whatever the top level is. And I think that before, it's whether it's like motocross, or it's, you know, I was like super into golf, and it's the top level of that is so far away that I think that you almost need to pick something in your life where the top level is attainable. Because I've been saying a little bit lately that how you do anything is how you do everything.
100%.
And that has been another thing. It's a philosophy that's come from training, essentially. And it's like, if you can put in the absolute, like, there are times I will leave there fucking cooked.
Yeah.
I got nothing left to give. And you do that, and there is a sense of gratification that comes with that, regardless of the outcome, whether it was me putting beatings on people or me getting beat up.
Yeah.
There is an inherent satisfaction that comes with that. And then it made me want to feel that satisfied everywhere else.
Yeah.
And then that's what made me start thinking about, like, how you do anything is how you do everything. So it's like, we should pick something in our life that it's like we can achieve, you know, enlightenment in a way in that one area, because then it's the follow-on. Like, you can't not have a follow-on effect.
Yeah.
And again, like, it's still early days, and it's still, I feel like I'm just becoming aware of this, and now there's so much more to go.
Yeah.
But I don't know how many people have something in their life that there is that a realistic, achievable excellence in something, and that in working towards that, the follow-on effect and the filter down effect of that will make all of your life better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
That's where I'm at.
And that's fucking sick.
It's good. Yeah. Oh, I love that 4-step.
4 modes of consciousness.
4 modes of consciousness.
Yeah.
Is there a book that you read about that, or?
I got that from one of my mentors, Gary.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a book called 4 Modes of Consciousness.
Yep.
Yep. But I hadn't read it. I just kind of
got that information from him.
Yeah. My filters on how to extract that.
The mentors thing is interesting, because I don't think a lot of people would have mentors in their life. I think you're around people that you look up to, but that term is something that anyone that is very successful, you'll hear them use that term of like one of my mentors. Like, that's something that you're obviously super into.
Yeah, so into it. Because it's
again, it's one of those things
I don't know what I don't know.
With resistance, and it can sound hokey though, right? At the start.
Yeah.
If you want to look through that lens.
If you want to look through that lens, but if you're looking through that lens, you're sabotaging yourself. And if you want to look at that and pretend like you know everything, then you're full of shit.
Yeah.
And if you think you know everything, you don't need a mentor, then you definitely need a mentor. It's like if you one of the Eastern sayings is that everyone should meditate for half an hour every day, unless you're really, really busy. If you're really busy, you should meditate for an hour every day.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's that kind of concept in that.
Yeah.
I feel.
It's one of those things though where it's like, okay, cool, bro. Where do I get a mentor?
Yeah. Well, what do you want to become unconsciously conscious at?
Yeah. So do you just hunt out the guy that's like
unconsciously conscious
really
at it?
Really fucking good at it.
Yeah. It's like, so bro, you want to be really good at boxing. Well, who's unconsciously conscious and a fucking weapon at boxing?
Yeah.
Go hit him up.
Be around that dude. Yeah.
Ask him shit. Drill, get right into his brain.
Yeah.
Get right into his mind. And if you want to do that in business, if you want to do that in property development, well, who's someone better at it than you?
Yeah.
To be able to do that requires you to drop your ego for a second.
Say, you've got to be extremely humble to then call. Like, have you had a situation where you've literally just called somebody? I guess to say like, will you be my mentor is like kind of, it's probably not going to happen like that a lot of the times. But like, what is your process of like identifying a person and then making that connection? And what's your conversations look like to a person that you're like, he is unconsciously conscious of this, and I would strive to be like that person?
Yeah, it takes a level of getting to know that person, and seeing how they're living and breathing, and what is it that I want to learn from that person that really intrigues me. And if that is something that I do want to learn, then it's like, one, maybe they do that. Maybe they have a mentorship program. Maybe they haven't, but they've thought about it. And maybe you are the catalyst to helping them create that. It's, each to their own with that understanding.
Yeah, you're right, though. It is. It requires a definite level of humility, though, to then put all of your ego aside and to become, like, completely malleable. And because even the way that you can ask questions to somebody can be out of ego. Like, you've really got to be aware of like a genuine nature of having a conversation with somebody. Yeah,
definitely. And it's like back to, is your ego getting in your own way? You've just got to check in with that on yourself. Only you know that.
Yeah, for sure.
And
one of the things, because I don't want to... Do you have a time you have to get out of here by?
Pretty soon, I think.
All right. One of the things I want to talk to you about, and you just let me know when you've got to go too, by the way, because we could be here for hours.
We could be.
But the breathing stuff that you've been into lately and the workshops that you've been doing are fascinating. And the whole cold exposure thing, what got you into that, and what have you seen, again, as a guy that tests stuff on yourself? Like, what improvements have you made as a result of like a deep dive into that world? Yeah,
I think the ice is an amazing metaphor for triggers. It's an amazing metaphor for the other triggers that lie in our life. We can be triggered by traffic, by what other people say, by this, by that, and the ice forces us into reacting. So if it forces us to react, then it also has the ability to train us to be more of a responder.
Yeah.
And it helps to train us to go within, try and practice quietening the mind, and to tune into ourselves and not be so influenced by our external environment.
Yeah, okay.
So the breathing in the ice is a practice for that. And within the workshops, it's a lot of what we're talking about today, really just prepping people into knowing that this workshop here is to get to know yourself, is to get to know what you're thinking when you step in that ice.
Yeah.
What parts of you have fear? What parts of you want to get out? How you get through it. Like all of those things is you getting to know yourself. And if you're doing it in the ice, which is a really big trigger, then how you do anything is how you do everything. It's going to be how you respond to a trigger outside of the ice, whether it's a confrontation or whatever. Whether you're in the ice and you get frustrated and you can't handle it, well, that's probably how you're going to handle confrontation too. So it's just a
or
beautiful,
anxiety, or fear.
Yeah, anxiousness. It's like, let's turn that dial into excitement and try and tune into ourselves enough to make that shift between the anxiousness that the ice creates and the excitement that you can have for creating this experience for yourself.
And are you now to the point where you are excited to get into that tub?
There'll always be days where it's like, all right, how tuned in am I?
Yeah.
Because if I'm all outside of myself, then yeah, I've probably got some fear stepping into it.
Yeah.
But if I'm like tuned in, then I'm like, yeah, I'm excited to step in here and test myself.
Yeah, but it never gets easy. Because I think that's the thing. That's like that's the lie we tell ourselves. Is that if we do this thing enough, it'll be easy.
Yeah.
But I think the people that achieve great things are the ones that have just reconciled with the fact that it's never going to be easy.
Never gets easier. You just get better at it.
Yeah. And I think that's the lie though, that people tell themselves, because they'll say do it for 6 months or 3 months, but then it's like, it's not getting easier.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not supposed to.
And wouldn't that be like a halt? That would create a halt for someone new to it, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look how easy it is for these people.
Yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily easy. They're just better at it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They've just practiced it and they've gone through the 4 modes of consciousness of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you look at people who are doing those things, in sport and whatever, it's like, if you want to create a big business, it's not that your big business gets easier, you just get better at managing it and better at dealing with it.
So have you got, I'll let you get out of here just because I know you're a busy dude. I thought getting 3 hours would be pretty tough with you. But have you got any workshops coming up? Have you got anything to sort of plug or where people can sort of get at you?
One thing we've got coming up on the 2nd of November, it's actually a nutritional workshop for performance athletes. It doesn't just have to be for performance athletes, but it's based around how to eat right around performance times, pre, during and post. That's at an organic cooking school down in inland of Newrybar called Bhavana. That's on the 2nd. And then on the 9th is one of the ice bath and breathing workshops, and that's at the Active Gym here in Burleigh.
Yeah, right.
So we've got
on the 9th.
On the 9th. So we've got 2 of those different ones coming up, and both very individualized and different. But
and how do people get onto those?
Check out my website, www.taylorcecil.com.au.
Yep.
And workshops tab and all the info there.
Well, I've really enjoyed you coming on this podcast, and I'd love to make it a semi-regular thing as your schedule allows it, because there's so much stuff that we can go into. Mate, but
so good.
You're a guy that I look up to a lot, and I enjoy, even though we don't talk every day, I enjoy looking at what you're doing most days, and definitely drawing inspiration from the stuff that you've got on and the effects that you've had on people that I know and care about. So
thanks, brother. No, thank you very much, and thanks for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed it.
I loved it.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Awesome, man. Thanks so much,
Dude, unreal.
Yeah, really.